we're going to have possibly the most asked question ever answered today. We are going to talk about download numbers once and for all, and definitely not the last time. But we're going to talk about download numbers, what to expect, and how to measure your show's success. Welcome to Uncommonly More with Stacey Harris. I am Stacey Harris, the CEO and founder of Uncommonly More. Uncommonly More is a contract marketing department for female-owned brands ready to build a bigger impact. Our team supports leaders who want to market with integrity and share their message their way. With a focus on people first, the team supports clients by building strategies that support growth. Essentially, we do uncommonly more. And here at the show, we're talking about podcasting and content marketing and digital marketing strategies and social media marketing and all sorts of other things you need to know now to make a bigger impact with your business, either on your own or with the support of a team. I think we should just get into it now, though. So let's get started. Welcome to another lovely episode of Uncommonly More. I am, in fact, your host, Stacey Harris, and I'm stupid excited about today's episode because this is probably one of the most common questions I get. I think that the never-ending chase around download numbers is one of the least fun parts of podcasting. And so today, I want to just put some fact, some reality to this conversation. I'm talking about this over on the podcast newsroom as we gear up for November. And I'm talking about the importance of comparing your show to your show. And this episode is all about not that, but that is the lesson. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some numbers and I will link to the three pieces that I am going to mention in this show because I want you to go look at them. I want you to really, really take in some averages because there's a lot of talk mostly from people trying to sell you podcasting courses around how podcasting is the only way to get results, and it's your like Staples commercial style easy button to just fame and fortune. I can't even say without laughing. And it's not. It's definitely not. First of all, I've yet to find a podcast that came with an easy button, and I've been doing this for a while. And also, it's really, 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 really vague what downloads mean. Because here's the deal. Downloads are one part of your metric system. So we're going to talk about what other ways I want you to be measuring your show, but I'm also going to share some numbers and some stats and add some fact to this conversation with links back to the sources and everything. So it's not just me going, no, it's fine, you're fine, we're fine. Although you are fine, it is fine, and we are fine. And I think these numbers will help you understand that. I hope anyways. So know right now, you're going to want to go back into your podcast player, click some links, head over to the show notes if you want to get them there on the website, uncommonlymore.com. That's cool too. Wherever you want to get these numbers, I want you to go look at them. Before we dig into those numbers, I want to let you know we are going to be taking on 3 more podcasts before we close out the year. We are currently taking applications to fill those spots. If you want to start 2022 a whole lot less stressed about your podcast and you want to have a whole lot more fun with it next year, let's have that conversation now. Like I said, we're going to only bring on 3 more clients before the end of the year. And really, really, like 2 of those need to be in November. So if you are looking forward to working with us and you've been thinking about it and we've been on your wish list, now is a really good time to get in because we're having those conversations. So head over to uncommonlymore.com/podcast production, learn more about what podcast production services look like, and book a conversation with me. This is a absolutely no strings attached call. This is for us to talk about what the process could look like for you, what the benefits could be like for you. It's for me to get a better feel for your show, to make sure that we can be helpful to your production process and be helpful to your show. And if nothing else, we'll have a real good time chatting. So head over to uncommonlymore.com/podcast production. If for some reason you are not the right fit or the timing isn't right, I am happy to point you in a direction that might be more supportive. So head over to uncommonlymore.com/podcast production. Let's jump in with my most favorite question. How many downloads should my show be getting? Here's the deal. I don't know. No one does. You know why? Because should is a stupid word. It's a stupid word. I don't care how many downloads your show should be getting. I want you to be looking at what your goals are for your show and if your show is reaching those goals. For example, my biggest metrics for this show are not downloads. It's calls booked. It's conversations had. It's replies to my emails. It's signups to the podcast newsroom. Seriously, that's what we're looking for. That's what I want to see. Downloads are great. They are often an indicator early of success of an episode, attraction with a topic, things like that. I'll absolutely use my download numbers for that. But they do not tell me if my show is doing well or not. They do not tell me if my show is supporting my goals or not. Calls booked, opt-ins to the newsroom, podcast, replies to emails, Instagram DMs. I had somebody earlier this year DM me and say, I have been binging your show, and you said it was time, and you're right, it's time. Let's do this. That's how I know my show works. That is how I know. It's not downloads. So when you talk about how many you should have, I don't want you to worry about that. I want you to look at what your show is actually doing for your business. Now, if you still want to know, well, how does my show measure up against the averages? Then I want you to click the links in the show notes. The first one, in full disclosure, is an article from September of 2020. However, there will be another link later that shows you that these numbers are still really quite valuable. So head over to that link. But this article is based on a episode of The Feed, which is Libsyn's podcast. Libsyn being a podcast host. Rob, who was one of the co-hosts of the Libsyn podcast and also the VP of Podcaster Relations, gave some numbers around what was happening last September for podcasts who are on the Libsyn host. Not surprising. This is one of those shows. What I love is that Rob actually gave some stats from their library of shows based on episodes from that summer of 2020. And the median number of downloads for a show was like 121 downloads for an episode. Yeah. I was quiet for a while because I want you to really sit with that. In 30 days, if you have more than 121 downloads, you're doing better than half the shows on Libsyn. And again, I know this was a year ago, but these numbers are still very relevant. And I know that because if you look at the second link in the show notes, which is the Buzzsprout podcast stats link, which I encourage you to save. This is Buzzsprout, which is another podcast host, Libsyn competitor. They have this page on their website all the time. Global stats. It's fantastic. It updates monthly. And it breaks down a ton of information. One of which is the episode downloads in the first 7 days for their shows. And the median, so the half point on this, in the first 7 days, is 29. 29 downloads. It's a 2-digit number. 29. If you get more than that, you're doing better than half the shows. So that tells you that number we saw from Libsyn last summer over 30 days, still pretty on par, because these are October 2021 numbers that I'm looking at. That's what you're going to see when you click over from the show notes. You're going to see this month's, or well, last month's numbers. Yeah. The top 25% of shows. Top 25%. This is the 25% best shows. Top 25%, right? 7 days. 87. Yeah. 87. 87. Still a 2-digit number. We don't hit a 3-digit number until we start talking about the top 10% of shows. And that's 308 downloads in 7 days. That puts you in the top 10% of shows. That's crazy. So I want you to let go of this idea that you have to be getting thousands or tens of thousands of downloads a show. It's simply not true. It's just not. And I say that as somebody who has a show in the top 10%. Whoa. Right? This is not about getting hundreds and thousands of people of listening. It is, however, being made more and more clear that it's much, much more valuable for you to compare your show against your show. And again, we talked about this on the podcast newsroom this month. That episode is out now. Head over if you haven't listened to the podcast newsroom show yet. Make sure you are subscribed to it. It is a private feed. All you got to do is sign up. Is go to uncommonlymore.com/newsroom and get yourself access to the private feed. Totally free. We talk about this there because it's so, so important. You have to be comparing your show against your own show. Look at what your show did this month last year. Look at what your show did last month, 6 months ago. If you've been, like me, podcasting for a while, one of my favorite things to do is look at my stats compared to year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7, and as of this month, year 8. That's right. I have had this very show for 8 years. And do you want to know what I compare this show to? This show. I don't care how well your show is doing. Love ya. Unless I produce it, I'm not all that invested. As long as it's getting you the results you want to get in your business, I don't care what the number is. Because the download number, not wildly make or break. Because there's not actually tens of thousands of downloads happening. In fact, I'm going to take these Buzzsprout numbers all the way to the top. The top 1% of shows. The creme de la creme. The best of the best. This is being unnecessarily dramatic, but I'm excited about it. Are you ready for this? Are you expecting, take a second, for 7 days, are you expecting a 6-digit number here? 100,000? 50,000? 10,000? 5,000? How about 3,974? Just under 4,000 downloads in the first 7 days puts you in the top 1% of every podcast out there. Yeah, top 1%. I will be honest with you, most of our clients are in the 5 or 10%. Seriously. No joke. It's not as big of a number as you might think. And that's why it's important to compare your show against your show. Because what everybody else's numbers are not as big as you think they are. So fact. Use the fact. The third thing I want to send you to is Riverside.fm, which is a podcast recording tool. Put out an article September of this year, breaking down a ton of podcast statistics and trends, and giving some good context for why they matter. You've got things like who's listening and where they're listening and things like that, how they're listening, how people find it. But what I love about this is they talk about how many listeners does the average podcast get. And they say the average podcast gets about 27 listens per episode. They don't tell us how long of a span of time that is, but they're referencing the same numbers we're seeing in the first two links that I mentioned. In fact, they say the top 1% of podcasts have about 3,200 downloads an episode. So that number is actually a little lower than what we saw last month from Buzzsprout, right? So this is not crazy numbers. What I love about this, though, is they then talk about, and then there's the Joe Rogan Experience, which has an audience upwards of 7 million for some episodes, which is cool. Absolutely. But those outlier numbers where we talk about the Joe Rogan Experience, which I try to talk about as little as possible, but that's just me. We're talking about a different category of podcast than you are. And this piece is why I want to bring us back to comparing your show to your show. Because when we look at just below this section, in the article from Riverside FM, which again is in the show notes, they talk about what are the most popular kind of podcasts. And those are comedy, news, true crime, and sports. And if you listen to this show and you care about what I'm talking about right now, it's because you, my friend, do not fit in one of those 4 categories. Because your show is not built the way these shows are built. Some of the examples here are like comedy, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, which is a great show, by the way. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, which is also a really fun show. The news, they're talking about The Daily, TED Talks Daily. True crime, we're thinking about Serial, My Favorite Murder, In the Dark. For sports, they're talking about Pardon My Take and The Bill Simmons Show. You know what all of those shows have in common that's different than your show? They're looking for sponsors. The revenue, the business model is ads. It's like TV. That's what it is. It's network TV. They're selling ad breaks. That's not what you're trying to do with your show. So you don't care if Joe Rogan has 7 million listeners in an episode. You don't. Because you have different business models. You don't need, and quite frankly want, 7 million people knocking down your door saying, "Can I hire you right now?" That sounds overwhelming. I mean, I'd love to work with you right now, but if there were 7 million of you, I'd be stressed out. So when you look at the numbers of what's happening in general, when you look at the numbers of what's happening for some shows, make sure you're also comparing what your business model is versus their business model. And this is why we compare our show against our show and not our show against other people's show, which is basically the soapbox point of this episode. That's what I want you to be doing, is comparing your show to you, not anyone else. And paying attention to those other metrics, those things we talked about around conversations, traction with DMs and emails and things like that. Paying attention to sales that are coming in, opt-ins to your email list. Is the call to action being answered? If it is, then stop worrying about your download numbers, all right? Or at least worry about them differently. Maybe that's the best I can ask for, okay? Worry about them differently. I want to remind you once more that we're talking about things like this over on the podcast newsroom. We're having conversations like this with our production clients. If you want to get access to one or both of those things, head over to uncommonlymore.com, sign up for the private feed, the podcast newsroom, and of course, submit an application. We are going to be bringing in 3 more clients, 3 more podcasts to produce before the end of the year, and I'm super, super excited to see who they are. And I hope one of them is you. So I'll see you soon, and we'll talk next week. I want to take a second and say thank you. Thanks for listening to the show today. This is the start of a conversation. I want to hear from you. So come on over to Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever. If you're subscribed to the email, hit reply on your email and say, hey, let me know how the show is going to manifest itself in actions and implementation for you, because that's really why I do this. It's just so that you can do things. I'd also love to get more people listening to the show so that we can push out the negative marketing messages happening in the world and really override it with empowerment and people-first focused marketing so that we can all be seeing the kind of marketing we want to be seeing. And the first part of that is, of course, doing the kind of marketing we want to be seeing. The second part of that is helping everybody else do it too. And so share the show. And of course, leave a rating and a review for the show. If you head over to ratethispod.com/more, MORE, you will find an easy link to leave a rating and a review on a couple of different platforms, whatever platform you want to share it with. I would appreciate it. Really only takes a minute. Also, if you are interested in getting support from my team, sitting down and chatting with me, head over to uncommonlymore.com. That's where you'll find all the resources we talked about today, full transcript of this show and every show we've done before, and all the shows we do coming forward, right? It's a great way to stay connected. It's a great way to find out exactly how we can support you. So your next step, of course, is to head over to uncommonlymore.com, and I will see you next week.